If you visit a Korean home, there is one thing you are expected to do at the entrance. You take off your shoes. To Koreans, this feels completely natural. But why? Is it simply to keep the house clean? That's part of the answer. But there's a much deeper story. Winters on the Korean peninsula can be bitterly cold. For centuries, people had to burn wood to cook their food and survive the winter. In a traditional Korean kitchen, a fire burned beneath a large cooking pot. But think about all that heat. Once the cooking was finished, why simply let it escape? At some point, people discovered that the hot smoke and heat from the cooking fire could be directed underneath the living space. The same fire could cook dinner and help warm the room. It was a remarkably efficient idea for a cold country. Korea was not the only civilization to discover the idea of heating people from below. In northern China and Manchuria, people developed a system called the kang. The kang was usually a large, raised platform heated from underneath. People could sit on it, eat on it, and sleep on it. Thousands of kilometers away, the ancient Romans developed another system. Their hypocaust circulated hot air beneath raised floors and sometimes through walls. It was especially famous in Roman bathhouses and large buildings. So the basic idea of using heat beneath a living surface was not uniquely Korean. What became distinctive in Korea was what happened next. Over a very long period of time, floor heating became deeply integrated into ordinary homes and everyday life. Early Korean floor heating did not necessarily warm an entire room. Some early systems heated only part of the living space. Archaeological remains show narrow L-shaped heating channels running along part of a room. In Korean, this partial form is known as jakgudul. Over centuries, however, the heated area expanded. Eventually, the system developed into a structure that could warm most, or all, of the room floor. And that change was important. The floor was no longer simply a surface above a heating system. The warm floor itself became a place to live. So how did traditional Ondol actually work? First, a fire was lit in the kitchen firebox, called the agungi. The fire heated the cooking pot above it. But the hot smoke did not immediately disappear up a chimney. Instead, it entered channels beneath the floor. These smoke channels were called gore. Above them, builders placed large, flat stones called guduljang. Hot smoke moved beneath these stones and transferred its heat upward. The stones became warm. The floor above them became warm. And the room became warm. After giving up much of its heat, the smoke finally escaped through a chimney on the other side of the house. Even the chimneys could take very different forms, from simple rural structures to elaborate decorative chimneys in royal palaces. But a traditional Ondol floor was not equally warm everywhere. The part of the floor closest to the firebox received the most heat. This warmest part of the room was called the aretmok. In many families, the warmest spot was offered to someone who needed it most. An elderly parent or grandparent might sit there. A young child might sleep there. Someone who was sick might be given the warmest place. So Ondol was more than a heating technology. It helped shape the way a family used the room. Once the floor was warm, something very natural happened. People began to organize everyday life around it. Koreans sat directly on the floor. They placed low tables on the floor and gathered around them for meals. At night, bedding was spread directly on the warm floor. In the morning, the bedding could be folded and put away, and the same room became a living room again. One room could therefore serve many purposes. It could be a dining room, a sitting room, and a bedroom. The floor was not simply something people walked across. People lived on it. And now the custom of taking off shoes begins to make much more sense. Imagine walking outside on dirt roads and muddy paths, and then entering a room where your family sits, eats, plays, and sleeps on the floor. Wearing outdoor shoes into that space would bring dirt directly into the family's living area. Keeping the floor clean was therefore not simply a matter of appearance. The floor was effectively part chair, part dining space, and part bed. Korea's heated floors and floor-based lifestyle helped reinforce a very clear boundary between outside and inside. Shoes belonged on the outside of that boundary. But the warm floor came with a price. It needed fuel. A lot of fuel. Families needed wood for cooking, and they needed even more during the cold winter months to keep their rooms warm. Firewood had to be cut, collected, carried home, stored, and constantly replaced. Old photographs of Korea show people carrying enormous loads of firewood on traditional A-frame carriers called jjigae. Homes often stored piles of fuel for cooking and heating. Of course, household heating was not the only reason Korea's forests were devastated. Colonial-era exploitation, war, poverty, slash-and-burn agriculture, and other pressures all contributed. But the enormous demand for firewood was certainly part of the problem. By the years around the Korean War, vast areas of the country had been severely deforested. Look at the mountains in these old photographs. They hardly look like the Green Mountains of Korea today. The destruction reached its peak in 1956. At that time, 58% of Korea's forest area was classified as bare mountain. Beginning in the 1960s and continuing through the 1970s, Korea changed rapidly. Large-scale forest restoration programs were launched. At the same time, household fuel began shifting away from firewood. One fuel became especially familiar to generations of Koreans: the coal briquette known as yuntan. Instead of spending hours collecting firewood, families could buy these compact briquettes and use them for cooking and heating. Yuntan was cheap, practical, and convenient. Old photographs of Korea often show stacks of these round briquettes outside homes and shops. But this convenience came with a frightening danger. When coal burns incompletely, it can produce carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is especially dangerous because people may not realize that they are breathing it. In homes heated with yuntan, gas could sometimes leak through cracks in the heating system or flue and enter the room. A family sleeping on a warm floor might have no warning. Carbon monoxide poisoning became a serious social problem in Korea. The danger was so familiar that older Koreans still remember the expression, "yuntan gas poisoning." In 1976 alone, more than 1,000 people died. Then came one of the most important changes in the history of Korean floor heating. Engineers no longer needed to send smoke directly beneath the floor. Instead, a boiler could heat water. That hot water could then circulate through pipes installed beneath the floor. After releasing its heat, the cooler water returned to the boiler and was heated again. The old idea had been transformed. Coal briquettes could heat water in a boiler. Oil-fired boilers also became common. And in places without piped city gas, LPG could also be used as a boiler fuel. Different fuels and different machines could now produce the same result: a warm floor. The smoke disappeared, but the warm floor remained. Korean homes were changing just as dramatically. Traditional houses gradually gave way to modern housing, and millions of Koreans moved into apartment buildings. In cities, piped gas networks expanded, especially from the late 1980s onward. Today, many urban Korean homes receive natural gas directly through pipes. A compact wall-mounted boiler heats water, and that hot water circulates through pipes beneath the apartment floor. Compare that small modern boiler with the old kitchen firebox, the smoke channels, the heavy stone slabs, and the chimney. Almost everything has changed. Wood gave way to coal briquettes, oil, LPG in some homes, and piped city gas. Traditional houses gave way to high-rise apartments. Smoke channels gave way to water pipes. Even the heating equipment became dramatically smaller. And yet, one idea survived: keep the floor warm. And that brings us back to the entrance of a modern Korean apartment. The old firebox is gone. The stone heating channels are gone. The heavy guduljang stones are gone. The traditional chimney is gone. But beneath the modern floor, warm water is still circulating. And the floor is still more than something people walk on. Koreans still sit on the floor. Children play on it. Families sometimes gather on it. And many people still enjoy sleeping on a warm floor. Of course, a Korean person today does not stand at the entrance thinking about ancient Ondol before taking off their shoes. Customs survive long after people stop thinking about where they came from. But centuries of living close to a warm floor helped shape the way Koreans understand indoor space. The entrance became a boundary. Outside is where the shoes have been. Inside is the clean living space. The house changed. The heating changed. But the floor remained a living space. And the shoes still stop at the door.